The growing calls across the nation to defund the police.
To end policing as we know it.
Off the charts violence in New York City. 11 people shot in just 8 hours on Sunday.
This is about the police officers who every single day put on that uniform and they run towards danger when we run away from it.
Oh, guns up, Andrea. You gotta unmute your mic. It's night shift. If you're sitting in your cars right now and you're falling asleep, we got the show for you. We got the show to wake you right up, don't we, Andrea?
What just happened with Craigers?
Craig's dropping in on the super chats, leaving us $99 right out of the gate, baby. $99.99. This is failure to stop night shift. All the show, all the true crime, murder, and drama and mystery. As one citizen, Andrea up late, I think she is on Instagram. She delivers the true crime, and I simply react to it. Guys, we're rocking 5 shows a week right now. Again, we are not on the network anymore. We are independent. And that is only because a lot of people don't know that, but that is only because since December, the ad agency in LA was not doing a great job of getting us good pro law enforcement advertisers. And they just weren't doing it. And at the end of our contract, we talked with Drinking Bros and they said, boys, we give you the graces to go out and do it on your own. They gave us the show and here we are rocking it. So Mondays, it's Off the Cuff. This episode was one of my favorites of Off the Cuff. They killed it. The Disruptors, real high energy stuff there today with, I forgot the guy's name. Was it Ramos? Reyes? Guy's a total badass. Way more badass than I'll ever be. Thursday, all the pop culture news, so you don't have to sound like an asshole cop to your civilian friends on Last Call of the Day. That's live, which we're going to have a special guest this Thursday. Craig Dulesky. Craig Dulesky coming on. And then, of course, we have our staple show on Fridays, The Breakdown with Mike the Cop and Andrea and Tansey. We did get some mail call in. However, this mail is specifically for Mike and I, Andrea. It does not have your name on it.
It's fine. It's fine, guys.
So we're going to read this on Friday. It came from old Anthony Staffold. And we're going to open that up on, this on Friday. If you'd like to send something to Andrea up late, you can send it to 427 East Main Street, Clayton, North Carolina. That's 427 East Main Street, Clayton, North Carolina. And just make sure you address it to Eric Tansey or just Failure to Stop. And you can put Andrea's name or Eric's name or Mike the Cop's name in there if you want to. But that's how you get a hold of us. I'm not going to take up too much of your time, guys. We got a lot of people in the live chat tonight. We got Sean Huskameyer Weiner, Bear Schaefer, Lumber Chef, Sarah Kelch, Craigers, of course, Bosco, Davey, El Wall, Lazaro Lopez is creeping. It's because he's got a big major crush on old Andrea Uplate.
What's up, Lazaro? So
I know that you've got a real good crime case. Now, Andrea, I'm not going to lie to you. I know this case. I've been following this case for a couple of years because I'm a true crime basic white boy.
White bitch, yep.
And so I do follow these things. I'm excited to hear your take on it. I do have some opinions. on this case because I think of all the other true crime people. What was it that Terry called you? Old J.
Terry called me a lot of things. He said that I
a lonely housewife or something.
You know what? We agreed that we weren't going to give that guy any airtime, but I evidently do look like every shift manager at a mediocre Hooters. So that's fun. That's
too much because you do. I
mean, right?
Listen, I'm not judging you, but I can't even do it anymore. Every true crime person that has come out and done an episode on this, and there's a lot of really good ones, right? What is it? Crime Garage?
Mm-hmm. True Crime Garage actually has a lot on this one.
Really, really fun take on it. However, everybody gets caught up on one part of the case. Now, I know that you're doing this in 2 or 3 episodes, so I'm not going to jump too far ahead, but it's the first episode that I think all the other true crime junkies, I think they have one fact wrong, and it's leading them down a very different path. And you guys know me, I like to give different perspectives, but I think I have a different perspective than they do. of this. We'll let you guys decide. I'll let Andrea get to it, and then I will interrupt her as I always do, and butt in with my part on this. Maybe we can debate that. But I'm going to turn it over to you there, Andrea. It's your show. I'm just a visitor. I'm just the house DJ, really.
I like it. I like it. But by the way, happy belated birthday. Did you guys send your boy some love yesterday?
I'm still celebrating my birthday because I worked all day yesterday and I actually took today off. So today's really my birthday.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Yeah. So
going to Hooters.
I'll see you there. My shift starts at 10. I'll be right there. So we're going to take this back. This is a crazy, crazy story. And I actually had to admit to Eric that he was right today, because I thought for sure I could get this done in 1 or 2 episodes, and it's strongly going to be 2, if not 3. So much going on here, and we're going to take a little time to dig into a backstory a little bit. So if you have been following this at all and you know some of the more current news that has just kind of been breaking the past few days, we didn't, of course, have any idea. We already knew that this is something we were going to cover this week a couple of weeks ago. So we didn't anticipate to have big breaking news this week right before doing the show, which didn't complicate it. But now it's like I want to jump at the bit and tell the whole thing. And there's not enough time in one show. So we're going to break it down, go through it. And then next week, we will be diving into a lot more of the more current newsworthy stuff and more detail then. But by then, hopefully you'll have a good beat on this family, this part of town, and what really kind of set the stage for what ultimately happens more recently. All right, guys. So we're going to take it back to February. You will see me consult my granny notes a lot more tonight because there are a lot of times and dates, and we're going to jump around a bit. And I don't want to give you anything that's misinformation here. So on February 24th of 2019, we have a big day that does set the scene, like I said, moving forward. We're going to be talking about Paul Murdaugh. So real quick, there's some discrepancies on the way to say a lot of things. Yeah, there he is right there on your screen if you're watching. He's just kind of a ginger frat boy and like a plaid button down, all right?
Dude, it's so crazy because everybody in this family has that whole like frat boy plaid shirt thing going on. If you guys are just listening, tune in onto the YouTubes. You can see the pictures as we post them. And just make sure you hammer that like button.
Yep, for sure. And I think that you'll see, I mean, it's definitely coastal South Carolina, right? With money. And so with that comes a lot of that look. But so we're going to talk about him. So his last name is Murdaugh. So some people say Murdaugh, some people say Murdaugh. You'll hear both. His father's name is going to be a much more prominent character in our next episode, including this one as well. And it's spelled Alex, which I'm going to call him Alex. A lot of people do call him Alec. So there's some different pronunciations of their names there. So there's Daddy. If you're looking at the screen, he looks like the other one, but rounder. So this scene starts with Paul driving a boat. It's Dad's center console. It's a 17-foot center console. Paul's going to be on this boat with his girlfriend, Morgan Doty. So there's Paul and no. So
that was Morgan though.
That was Morgan. We'll get to that. So Paul and Morgan, there's 6 people that are going to be on this boat. And then we have Anthony. There they are. So on your left, if you're looking at the screen, on your left, you have Connor Cook. He's going to be a pretty prominent character in this story here. And that's his girlfriend, Miley Altman. In the middle.
So Connor, just for our listeners out there, Connor looks like he's got the Justin Bieber haircut. Or you remember the old Justin Bieber haircut?
Swoop. Yeah, it's a frat swoop.
A frat swoop. There we go.
So he is then cousins. If you're looking we show a couple in the middle, and that is Anthony Cook. So Connor and Anthony are first cousins. So the picture in the middle is actually Anthony Cook with his girlfriend, Mallory Beach. We're going to talk about Mallory here immediately. And then on your right there's Paul and his girlfriend, Morgan Doty. So the pretty girl right there in the middle, Mallory, unfortunately is the victim in the story that we're speaking of today. So there's Mallory there. Just kind of fresh out of high school, barely into college when all of this takes place. So they go. We don't know a whole lot about the day leading up to the evening where these events took place, except for we do know there's surveillance. There's different things that Paul. Uh, Keep in mind, he was 19 at the time. We have him time stamped at a couple of convenience stores buying beer. He was using his brother. So he has an older brother um, that's 3 years older than him, and he has been known to use his ID. So it has come out that he was using the brother's ID at the markets and the local gas stations to grab some beer. A few of them from the boat were. So that's not, I guess, innately egregious in and of itself. Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. But so he bought some beer throughout the day. There is speculation or hearsay that he was drinking throughout the day as well.
How old are these kids?
19. The oldest one was 20. I think almost all the rest of them
so
were
they're all
19.
underage. They all have fake IDs. They're all got on the boat.
Well, I can't say they all have fake IDs, but we know that Paul was using his brother's ID.
And they're going out on the boat for the day. Their dad's 17-foot center console.
Right. So they don't get on the boat until the evening. And it's, dad said, exactly. They've been on this boat a lot. They've actually been on the boat with dad, and we'll touch on that in a minute. But so this evening, there's some like family friends that are having an oyster bake. Good time. We're down near Charleston. And they're going to hop on the boat and go. So, like I said, speculation will say that Paul has been drinking all day. So they hop on the boat and they go to this gathering. So don't know a lot about what happened there. The only thing that we hear of for sure that happens there is that as they were about to leave, which is pretty late, I think it was, right after midnight. So 11 a.m., they're ready to head out. And there were some adults that say, hey guys, like, let's get an Uber. Right. So keep in mind
this is like a family oyster outing.
Yeah, it's a bunch of family friends having people, having a nice oyster bake. It's February, so it's a little chilly out. It's when you want them, right? It's a good time. Yep. So they're leaving a little after midnight that night. I think that to me, the first thing that was just so bothersome is to hear that the adults at this gathering, I can't say all of them, but at least a handful of adults were heard over to have said, hey guys, let's call you an Uber.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had a problem with that with this story because the cops are going to take a lot of rap here. The court system's going to take a rap on the beak here as well. But nobody, just like a lot of cases in this world, nobody wants to put the responsibility on ultimately who's at fault here. One, it's absolutely the parents. Like, you don't loan your kid a 17-foot center console boat and know what he's getting into. Like, if my kid's on my boat, I'm going to know if there's beer on that boat or not.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And if they're going to a family oyster roast, and we talk about this on Last Call all the time, and everybody's drinking there, and now you've got a whole bunch of teenagers getting back onto a boat who are shit-faced enough that you as a parent have to say, and listen, I don't care if it was his parent or like a friend of the parents. You see a drunk teenager trying to get on a boat, you don't let them get on the fucking boat. Pretty easy. It's called being a fucking parent. It's called being an adult, really.
And I will say, look, I'm not saying that I always made the best decisions. I tried to be a good girl. I tried to maintain honor roll and do all things. The decisions that I made that weren't my best choices growing up were independent of my parents. So I will say that my mother raised me in all the right ways. So any of the choices I made were absolutely of my own volition and my own will. But there's also, we've talked about this, being an intentional parent. There's also seeing around corners where your children at certain ages cannot, and being ahead of them as much as you can be. You can't be all the time, and I understand that. But in a moment where you see drunk kids after midnight hopping on a boat, 100% I'm grabbing those boat keys, or you're not going anywhere, or I'm getting on the boat with you. Like, it's probably not going to be a real fun night for anyone if you want to disagree. Right. Because in that situation, I am the adult. You'll catch me calling these guys kids throughout the night, I'm sure. And people will say, well, they were legally adults. Yeah, they are. They're also underage and they're acting like children. So I'm calling them kids because I'm a lot older than they are. But
a lot older.
Whole lot older. But so that's the first big thing. I can see kids buying beer underage, right? I can see all these things happening. It does happen. It happens every day. When it comes to adults stepping in and then not taking the reins, got a problem with that. Yeah, I'm taking the battery. Hydroman Blue. Good point. So at 12:11 they left that gathering. The next timestamp we have on them, keep in mind it's a small town of so this is another pronunciation discrepancy. Beaufort or Beaufort. Say what you want. We've got one in North Carolina and people say Beaufort. So that's what I'm gonna go with. But so in Beaufort, there's a lot of it's a small downtown, super cute coastal community, a lot of docks and walkways and river walks, if you will. So there's a lot of cameras, around these boats, around these docks, and these small restaurants and bars. So the next timestamp we have is 12:55, where we see Paul and Connor go into the it's called Luther's Rare and Well Done, and it's a bar. Luther's Rare and Well Done. They each get 2 rounds of Jaeger. They're there for 12 minutes. So I know. But
When's
Paul,
the last time you did Jaeger shots?
I think I did a car bomb many years ago, but I don't like licorice, so that was never my go-to.
Okay.
But you?
Last time I did Jaeger shots, I made some of my own house Jaeger. We called it Deer Blood's Cordial.
Sounds
and I forgot
terrifying.
why we made it or what we did. We made it at the distillery. Anyway, that's the last time I drank some of that.
Okay.
It was last year sometime.
Yeah, I just never liked licorice. But so they're at old Luther's Rare and Well Done. It's quite a name. Again, they're there for 12 minutes. So what we hear later, the disposition from the other kids that were there, the other 4, that a couple of them tried to go in. Bouncer wouldn't let them in. He did. I guess Paul's ID and Connor's ID were convincing enough. He wouldn't let the other ones in. But a couple of them, we know particularly Anthony, who is, so our victim Mallory, Anthony is her boyfriend. Anthony, if you're watching live right now, it's the picture in the middle, specifically was saying, hey guys, like, let's go. We don't want to go to the bar. Like, it's late. Let's get home. One of the other girls, I think it might have been, well, I can't speak on it, but one of the other girls needed to go to work early in the morning and was also trying to get them guys to leave. And anyway, at this point, from what I've understood, I think Paul was already done. Like he was probably pretty far gone by the time they were halfway through that oyster bake. So that's what they do. They go to the bar. They do leave pretty soon after. And the next timestamp we have, they left at 1:07. Right. So it's been 12 minutes. At 1:13, we have surveillance showing them walking down a pathway, and there they are. Toward the boat. So if you're watching, we have the one up in front here. I believe that's Connor. That looks like he's like backward to the camera. If you watch the actual video, he's walking backward, holding his girlfriend's hand, which I'm saying that to note that he wasn't so hammered. So I guess to say that later when he talks about things and describes what was going on, I kind of can believe what he's saying, because the kid was holding her hand and like walking backward, was not stumbling, swaying. He's kind of looking back at everybody chit-chatting with his friends. And then you also see in this picture Anthony and Mallory in the very, very back. From what the way the case breaks down and everything that I've read, and this is presumption for sure, but it sounds to me like Anthony and Mallory were probably the 2 most sober of the 6, with Paul being just done.
Well, you can see in this picture, and I know that like it's hard to look at a picture and take
in the video,
like,
you can definitely see what you're probably about to say.
Right. So you've got like the 2 holding hands up front, one guy walking backwards while holding her hands, which is pretty impressive. The other 2 are in the very back, kind of real cuddled into each other, holding hands. And then you got the shit show himself, who's off by himself, completely. Hand in his pocket, shirt untucked, hair in disarray, and his girlfriend, she's got one foot literally crossed in front of the other foot, like she can't even walk straight. And they're not holding hands. So they're the only 2 not holding hands.
Well,
so even in this weird picture, this own snapshot that I don't like to do, but in this picture that you have chosen, if I had to pick who's the drunk guy in the picture, I would pick.
Yeah. And when you watch his girlfriend, I mean, I'm not saying these are all, I'm sure they've had I think they've had actually a decent amount of years of experience, but not a ton, right? And they're still pretty young. I think that they were all inebriated for sure. But when you see, if you were just going by that snippet from that surveillance camera, Paul is literally like what you said, like in that still shot, he's off to the side. But when you see him like walking and moving, he's weaving, he's, swaying, all the things. So it's pretty evident. So that's why I thought it was important to show that for sure. We then have at 1:17 some videos, some surveillance of them pushing off from the dock. So they left the shindig at 12:11.
But so they were on this boat pretty much throughout the day as well, right?
Maybe.
Like leading up to the oyster roast?
Potentially. Maybe. I don't know. You may know that more than I do.
I'm going to show some pictures of the boat real quick, just so you can see that. That's which
Well,
homeboy does not look like he's 21, but he's shotgunning a Bud Light Lime.
Looks he's not. And that picture wasn't even necessarily in 2019 or when he was 19.
Okay. He looks like a fucking baby in that picture, dude. Like he looks like he can't be more than 14.
And we're going to get to that. So there's a couple other pictures that we'll look at a little bit later.
Okay.
That's okay. It's not a big deal. But I'm just saying, like, as we talk about the family and kind of break their dynamic down a little bit. But yeah, and so you know what? I don't know, Eric. They easily could have been on the boat all day. It's February, so I don't know. It could have been a nice warm day, but it could have just been they wanted to use it to travel to the thing. In fact, they stated later that the reason they didn't want to drive is because they knew there were DUI checkpoints going on. So I still don't understand why we're turning down an Uber ride at this point. Just bad choices all around. So they've pushed off from the dock at 1:17. So at this point, it's been right at about an hour, just over an hour since they left the gathering that they had been at, right? So we'll just go over the times and then we're going to talk a little bit more details. They left the dock at 1:17. We know that at 2:26, 911 was called. So for about an hour, they're on this boat before we get the 911 call that we're going to hear a little bit later. So while they are on the boat, at some point, Paul has stripped down to nothing but his boxers. We've all got that one friend.
My man.
All got that friend, don't we, Eric?
I can't say I haven't been that guy, where it's like I get to that point where I've had a couple of drinky poos. I'm on the boat with my besties. You know what? It's February. I'm getting down to my underwear. We get down to my boxers, and they're the frat boy boxers. They're those the real puffy kind, not the tights.
Boxers. No, just regular boxers,
ones,
not boxer
with the little
briefs.
button in the middle. Get that little hole open. I always pee out of the hole. I always dribble down the front of them too. I never get like a good clean urination right out of the front. I always get a little dribble down the side, and that's just the way they are. And so when I get naked at the party, you kind of see the little dribble marks on my boxers, and that's how I roll all night.
Thank you. We all thank you for that. So he gets down to his boxers and then he starts driving the boat, not just erratically because he's drunk. What are you laughing at? Not just
driving his boat in his boxers, man. Let the boy be. We don't kink shame on this show.
So from what everyone said, it wasn't that he was just driving erratically because he was drunk and losing his sense of control or anything like that. It was more, he became more aggressive. So that's what we're going to talk about now. This is when everyone else on the boat starts saying things like, Paul, like, let us take over. Let us drive. And he's saying no. And in fact, throwing a tantrum, right? No, it's my boat. It's not your boat. I'm the one that knows these waters. This is my boat. You won't drive my boat. And as they continue to ask him, he's getting more aggressive, getting more belligerent with everyone. And so, excuse me, so at one point, Anthony and Mallory, who is our victim ultimately, asked to just get off the boat. He said, okay, I don't have to drive it, but just let us off somewhere. We'll figure out how to get home. I'm not worried about it. Let us go. And Paul wouldn't let him off the boat. So this becomes more just tough to think about. As we know, they didn't just all pile in drunk and this accident happened. There's a little bit that goes into the in-between here. So this is when his friends start referencing Timmy. So Timmy is the name that they have given Paul when he becomes this intoxicated.
So So Timmy's like an alter ego.
It's his alter
right?
ego when he's drunk. They're children, so they've made a name for this kid. Like,
Right. So like when my wife when she becomes
Stop.
Smashly, we call her Smashly. Like she has an alter ego.
mhm.
When she gets so drunk that, she tries to find a trampoline and, gets a
Ooh,
little bit
Eric, you
wild.
just got too hot.
That's all right. That's because I was thinking about her.
You said Smashly.
But yeah, we call her Smashly. Now my alter ego is the Tasmanian Devil. Do you have one? Do you have you don't have an alter ego?
Never.
Because you probably don't get to that point of intoxication.
Mm-mm.
So they call this guy Timmy. So he has an alter ego. He has a Frank the Tank.
Absolutely. But he's not fun like Frank the Tank. So Timmy is known to be honestly just an ass. Like he's tough to be around. They even said something so specific. I heard in one of the things one of the podcasts I was listening to leading up to this, that he was known to spread his arms out and like spread his fingers out, and which seems like a silly move, but when he does that, that's something that's a tell, right? So when they see him do that, they know like, ooh, okay, like we're here. We've got Timmy now. Like Paul has left the building. And so I think they all were never again, it wasn't a Frank the Tank. They weren't happy to see this guy come out because this was always kind of bad news. So at this point, they've mentioned that they knew like this little alter ego had joined the boat. So they talk about him doing circles at this point. Think about doing donuts in your car. They're saying to slow down. They're saying all these things. And he's, again, becoming more egregious, becoming more belligerent, and doing just the opposite. So he's going in these big circles. A couple of times, some of the people were kind of thrown around the cabin of the boat. And his speed is increasing. So we'll fast forward to then what happens. And he eventually runs straight into a pylon. There's the aftermath of the boat. There's a 6-foot long, not even tear. I mean, the boat broke in two on top there. We'll learn that there's blood on the floorboard or on the carpet. There were dents and bangs in the actual pylons as well, which is not super easy to do. So
essentially they smash into a fucking bridge.
Well, so they say a pylon, and so what my assumption or my thought would be there is when you think of any potentially a bridge, any of the wooden like the posts, the poles, right, for a dock. If you're looking at slips, any of that, I'm just picturing kind of the little coastal community this is a creek. There's like creek and marsh. So there would just be a lot of the big, thick, heavy set, like wooden pylons that are dug down deep in the sand or the dirt to hold up all the docks and the piers. And they smack into one. So we do know that he was going initially and we'll talk about how we know this information later, but he was about 22 knots, then up to 24, 27, and then up to 29 knots. And he actually smashed into the pylon going 29 knots, which if you guys have never been on a boat, it's not that's just screaming fast, but it's not, don't compare it to 29 miles an hour in your car, right? So even if you're going 29 miles an hour in your car and you just go straight into a telephone pole, depending on the car or the position in which your car hit it, that could be a problem as well, obviously. 29 knots on a boat on a 17th. This wasn't a huge boat.
That's hauling ass. Like
on a 17-foot center console. This is fast.
That's hauling ass.
Really fast.
That's skipping across the water, man.
That's what I'm saying. So it's 17 or 29 knots on a on some kind of something is much different than on this boat. So it was a big. They were flying.
Yeah, I mean that's getting it, baby. That's you wreck a boat at 29 knots.
Well, and from what we've learned and from anyone who examined the scene with no hesitation. I mean, just straight on. So in fact, you can see if you're looking at the picture here, guys, you can see the front left of the boat. He didn't hit it smack head on, like the very front bow, but you can see that he hit the left side of that boat.
Jeez, really fucked that boat up.
It's pretty tough.
It's a nice boat too.
So what happened? So moving forward, we have a call to 911 at 2:26. Do you have that handy?
Oh, what? 911, where's your emergency? Hello? Police, fire, EMS. Hello?
We're in a boat crash on Archer Street.
Whereabouts on Archer Street?
In Archer Street, the only bridge on Archer Street.
Archer Street?
Archer's Creek.
Archer's Creek. Archer's Creek. Is it? Okay. What's going on?
It's by Paris Island.
Right. What's going on?
We're in a boat crash.
You know what kind of a?
A boat crash.
A boat? Did you say a boat crash?
A boat crash.
Okay, so you're at the dock? Hello, are you at the dock?
No, we just crashed in a boat.
Okay, are you in the water or are you?
We're in the boat.
Okay.
We have someone missing.
Okay. Hang on 1 second, okay?
Okay. So it's a little tough to listen to, knowing ultimately what we know about this, but we're not so close to this.
So when you listen to that 911 audio, and I know, when I heard it for my first time, I was like, man, this guy's really, really calm. He's really, really collected on the thing. It's because
he has a broken jaw. So that was Connor that made the call. So Connor is the cousin of Anthony, who is Mallory's boyfriend. So Connor makes the call. This is very important because later we're going to hear where Paul's family is trying to pin it on Connor that Connor drove. I think that him making this phone call was the perfect out for that. We do know that over the course of the few minutes, the hour that they were driving the boat from when they left until the wreck happened, that, like I said, he was doing these circles. He was belligerent. He was not, he was just so erratic. And so everyone was trying to take the wheel or ask him to take the wheel. There were times when one time he did actually leave the captain's chair he spit on his girlfriend and smacked her. We will then hear that that's not the first time he's been aggressive with her in that kind of way. So when he did that, someone else took the wheel. So there are times when technically someone else took the wheel. But Paul,
so it's like, this guy's drunk. He's free, just going freestyling on this boat. He gets up to go. I remember hearing the one part of the story where they said, like, hey, dude, you got to chill out. And he got up and he's like, oh, I don't need to chill out and don't touch the boat. And then he walked to the front of the boat. As you said, he spit on his girlfriend and slapped her for yelling at him to slow down. And then that's when homeboy here in the middle tried to actually go and take the wheel. And then, of course, that pissed him off and he went back. And then they started fighting. And then at that point, he gets his girlfriend. And according to all the other witnesses, sounded like he just kind of sat down at the back of the boat and held on to his girl and just said, hey, I mean, there's nothing I can do. We're just in it.
He did. So that's Anthony, and Anthony and Mallory were the ones who were asking to just be able to get off. And when they were not allowed to get off of the boat, he sat down toward the rear and she sat on his lap. So, but that was Connor that we heard that made the 911 call. And again, he did sound calm, cool, and collected, but the kid had a broken face. His jaw was broken.
And probably severely concussed from the,
I'm sure,
from the smack on the boat.
Shock. I mean, complete shock. As in, I don't mean like just mental, like his body was literally in point. Yeah, there's a picture. We're showing a picture of the deck of the boat with some blood in it. We do know that, Paul and Anthony and Mallory were thrown from the boat when this happened. Everyone else was tossed around. So Connor, with his broken jaw, was not thrown out of the boat. So whatever happened to his jaw is probably some of the blood you saw in the boat. Like he smacked something in there. But Paul, Anthony, and Mallory were thrown out. Paul and Anthony were able to kind of fight the current and get back to the dock, to the pier. And Mallory was not. And at this point, we've not seen Mallory We don't know. So he even says in the 911 call, if you heard when Connor calls, that we have one missing. We have someone missing. We can't find her. So EMS gets there, and this is where this story really kind of takes a turn. So EMS gets there. When they get there, everyone is huddled around. Think it's February. So even if it were maybe a really nice, warm for February day down in South Carolina, that could absolutely be the case. It's nighttime now, and they've gotten wet. They're cold. So they're huddling around. They're terrified. They're shaken up. They're injured. They're very, very injured. And they also can't find their friend. So we have all 5 of them and then Paul. So Paul is alone over on the side, huddled up. So they're kind of looking down, looking for Mallory. They're in a panic. EMS gets there. Paul is on the phone, huddled over quite a few feet away. We've learned that Paul used Miley's phone. Miley was Connor's girlfriend, to call his grandfather. That was the call he made. So EMS looks at everyone, and then we have what's called the DNR. So not a do not resuscitate that you would think of if you work in the hospital. It's actually the Department of Natural Resources. So the way, something I didn't know, the way that each state handles boat crashes or investigations is going to be different. It can be wildlife department. It can be the local police department. It can be a few different things. So in South Carolina specifically, it's called the DNR, the Department of Resources. So they come out and they kind of supersede an investigation in terms of a boat crash. So EMS gets there first to start to treat everyone, and then the DNR gets there to start taking depositions, statements, whatever.
And homeboy's just on the side talking to his lawyer
granddaddy,
because these are like the most prominent lawyers in the small town of in this small area of what is it? Beaufort, Beaufort, North Carolina, or South Carolina. So I don't know. It's I guess in Jacksonville, Florida, you got Farrah and Farrah, like Eddie Farrah, where he's on the billboards when you pull into Jacksonville, Florida.
People have actually equated this to if you live in New England somewhere, like the Kennedys, that's how they've equated this family and their hold on this area. Well, and just kind of their hold and importance on this area. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to go a little bit deeper into daddy and granddaddy here in a bit. But yes, so he had called grandfather, who is a lawyer. In fact, he's more so than just that. He's a solicitor, and we're going to talk about the definition of that and what that actually means for them and their family. So we know that when the DNR, the Department of Natural Resources, gets there, there's no field sobriety at the scene, and I'm going to ask you about that here in a moment. But we know later that they did subpoena or get a warrant, for Mallory's iPhone, Apple Watch, and for the boat's Garmin. So because they had that boat's Garmin, the digital data there, that's how we know about the speed the boat was going when it crashed, and the actual speed up prior to the crash, right? So this is something that I know has been a point of contention, and we'll go down a rabbit hole a little bit, but there's going to be actually a lot of these types of topics as this night goes on. But I think a lot of people have concern or question with the fact that while they issued a warrant for Mallory's things, they've never issued a warrant for Paul's phone. And bless you. And field sobriety test was not done at the scene.
I know, and I think that's the big point of contention with this whole case. By the way, guys, this case is this is only part 1. This is the boat accident. This is kind of like what gets a whole bunch of fucked up crimes that are going to happen after this. This is just the kind of shit that leads up to
this is literally laying groundwork for
this is literally laying groundwork for some really crazy stuff to happen later on in the next 2 parts of the series. But I know that in a lot of these true crime podcasts, they're really hung up on the field sobriety test and the police officers not taking Paul's cell phone or his belongings. Now, I we'll say that there is a possibility that the cops did know who the Murdaughs were. There is a possibility that the cops could have been friends with the Murdaughs. And there is a possibility that they could have done something nefarious, and that's why they did not do that. But I think it's more probably than not. Listen, man, every time I went to a crime scene, every time, I mean, I arrested the chief's son like 3 times. Like I was there for like 3 of his arrests. And every time he's like, you know who my mom is? Do you know who mom is? Matter of fact, one of the biggest investigations I went with was because I went to a domestic disturbance with a higher up official in the city of Raleigh, and she belligerently yelled and cursed at me. And all I said, I said hardly anything to her. I didn't say anything rude. I just said, ma'am, you're the one that called me to be here. Well, she filed a complaint that I notified the public that she's the one that called 911 in a menacing way. But I did not know that this woman was a high up person in the city, nor would I ever expect somebody that high up in the city to be belligerently yelling and cursing at me and acting the way she was. Right. My point here is that cops, we're like street level cops. There's no politics at street level police work. Like you're just trying to survive the night. You're just trying to like get out of as many reports as you can get out of writing. I mean, you're not trying to like, nobody's worth your $56,000 a year. So you can be like, do you know who I am? Like, I don't care. You know, like I'm not going to jail because you decided to get a DUI and I just let you off on a bribe or some crazy shit. Like nobody at the street level cares because we don't have enough political pull at the street level to get us out of trouble if we fuck that up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Does that make sense? So in this case, on a typical DUI scene where there is a fatality, probably not doing field.
We don't know there's a fatality yet, but yes, agreed. Everyone's shaken
being,
up and like just physically speaking, it would make a lot of sense.
I'm not doing a field sobriety test at all. I mean, you just wrecked a boat going 29 miles an hour and now you want me to walk. We want you to stand on one leg. We want you to like do the walk and turn. If it's a serious accident, and then here's the thing though, if it's a serious enough accident and I've got enough evidence on scene that I think it doesn't really matter about field sobriety, like you're going to the hospital anyway. Now I can go get a blood draw. There's cans of beer on the boat. There were empty bottles, little airplane bottles on the boat. Everybody reeked of booze. You could you could articulate the way that they were walking and stumbling upon themselves, especially if Paul was as drunk as they articulate him to be. No cop is going to have a problem articulating this to a magistrate in order to get a blood draw to draw this guy's blood or have him breathe into a alcohol breathalyzer at a jail. But a pre-breath test on the scene isn't even like it's not really admissible in court. The court doesn't take the reading of the pre-breath test done. It's only an indicator that you are drunk. It's not a probable cause thing.
Sure.
We still have to take you down to the jail, and before you're technically going before the magistrate, we're gonna have to go to a like certified calibrated breathalyzer machine that has to have somebody who's certified to use it do it. So we don't need to necessarily do a pre-breath test on the scene. Now, why didn't they take all their things? In a big giant DUI crash, I don't need your cell phone. I don't need that evidence. I have plenty of evidence in the boat. I've got the empty cans. I got all the things that we just talked about. I don't necessarily need to take your shit to prove that you were drunk driving on a boat.
To be fair, I'm not sure that they obtained the warrant for Mallory's phone and watch and the Garmin.
They probably didn't need a warrant.
I don't think that was that night. No, they did actually obtain a warrant to get it, but I don't know that it was right in that moment, is what I'm trying to say.
I couldn't imagine that why the parents wouldn't just give it to them. Like, I don't think you would need a warrant.
Well, and I mean, all I can go off is things that I've read, right? So
my daughter's missing. You can have her phone. You can have all of her shit. Like, find my daughter.
Right. So, so that's what's happened now. They've all been transported now to the hospital. So let's see here, because it's about later. It was March 3rd. The incident happened on February 24th. So on March 3rd is when they found Mallory's body. She was about 5 miles away in a marsh. Cause of death was blunt force trauma and drowning. So I think the reasonable assumption would be that she was thrown from the boat and very likely hit a pylon straight on. That would be what I think what happened there. Oh goodness. So they get to the hospital, and well, let's back this up real quick, because when the DNR was there, the Department of Natural Resources that we spoke about, the Beaufort County Sheriff's Department came as well, by the way. So they come, but then the DNR is just what handles specifically boat crashes. All right. So, David, it's actually a planner from 2021. And once I've made my notes for the case, I rip them out. So there you go. And it's perfect. So once the Beaufort County Police Department gets there and the DNR gets there, at some point we have Anthony sitting in the back of a police car. Anthony was Mallory's boyfriend. Anthony was not detained. He was not in any kind of trouble. Probably, I would assume just warming up. But as he's sitting there, Paul walks by outside on the sidewalk, and this is recorded. It's on the dash camera or something. And Anthony says, hey, he's saying a lot of things. I'm like, hey, you're going to get in trouble for this. This is all your fault. Like, I'm taking you down. You're an asshole. Like all these things. And he's screaming at him, and Paul's just kind of walking back and forth, kind of on and off the phone himself. And then finally Anthony yelled at him, he said something along the lines of, you probably won't ever see time for this. And I guess the footage shows Paul turns and grins in that moment. Like, the kid knew that he's not going to see time for this. So let me back up there a little bit though, and tell you also, let's talk a little bit about Paul and his rap sheet before any of this happened. So he studied, coincidentally enough, or ironically enough, criminology at the University of South Carolina. So from the years 2017 to 2018, he had 6 or so infractions in the year. In that 1 year, he was indicted on alcohol possession. He had a jury trial that was set, but delayed 5 different times. He was served a bench warrant for failure to appear and sentenced to alcohol diversion program in 2018. So 1 year before this happened, he had already been to an alcohol diversion program at 18 years old. He was
right now. The parents are allowing this kid to borrow their boat, go to an oyster roast. Now, like I said, dude, at the end of the day, these parents, they're fucking dirtbags.
Right. So, and that's what I was going to talk about a little bit later, like whether you agree or disagree with parents allowing 19-year-old, 20-year-old, kids to have drinks in front of you. When you have a child that this is the history you're looking at, he's already had multiple charges, never seen a day of jail, never had a slap on the wrist for it. Or in fact, I guess a slap on the wrist is all he did have. And then they were able to talk their way way out of this. The kid never saw anything, any time. So, he was cited in 2007 for littering. I'm done with him already.
Yeah, you gonna litter?
Littering and alcohol possession on a boat. Yeah. In 2017. This is 2 years.
Right. So now he's like,
happens. That's when he was 17 or 18. So just to give a little back story again. So when Anthony's sitting in the back of that car saying, you won't even get in trouble for this, and Paul turns and grins. I mean, there's a reason both of them are behaving the way they're behaving, because they both know. And Anthony's pissed about it because that's his girlfriend that's missing. So he gets to the hospital. The law enforcement that was there and the physicians both make notes, both make statements that Paul was not even arguably, it was across the board the most inebriated one of the 5 that got there. He was belligerent. He was not compliant with doctors or law enforcement. And they finally do a blood alcohol test at 4:00 in the morning. So remember
like 3 hours. It's like 3 hours. 3 hours after the incident.
Well, about an hour and a half. So I think 911 was called at 2. Like 2:20.
Oh, okay, that's right. I forgot they left the party like 12, like just before 1, and then they fucked around on the boat, I guess.
Yeah, they can. Well, and they went to that bar and did a few other things.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay.
Yeah, but 911 was called at like 2:26, I believe.
Okay. So an hour later, hour and a half later, they do this blood draw.
About an hour and a half.
Which a blood draw is going to hold up way more in court than this stupid pre-breath test and this stupid field sobriety test that all the podcasters like to bring up, that there must be some kind of conspiracy because the cops didn't do a field sobriety test. Listen, those cops don't give a shit about drunk guy over there. All they cared about was trying to find Mallory. I promise you. That would have been the only thing. They'd have been like, dude, we need to find this girl, right. And she's in the water somewhere. Like, I don't think the cops were too focused or cared too much on pre-breath tests and field sobriety games at this point.
So the blood test at the hospital was actually ordered by hospital staff. The physicians at this point are a little concerned that they don't know if he doesn't have anything else in his system at this point because he is so belligerent. He is so out of control, right? So then that will arguably be what some, like we've talked about, some people on the other side of the coin that are fussing at law enforcement. They're like, well, they're not even the ones that ordered this test. It was the hospital staff. It was the physicians. But they did, regardless of who ordered it, it was ordered, it was completed, and he rang in at a 0.286. So the legal limit is 0.08. So we're looking at about over three times the legal limit there.
Ooh, goodness. So Lynn, who's obviously followed this case a bunch, she thought that the dad refused the blood draw. I think once you have probable cause, it doesn't matter if the dad refuses the blood draw or not. You can get.
He's not a minor though. The child wasn't a minor.
If you ask consent, right? That's what I'm getting at. But it doesn't. You don't have to have consent for a blood draw. When you have probable cause in a magistrate, you get a warrant for the blood draw. So, like, yeah, you can ask, hey, do you have, can I get consent to search your blood? No. Okay, great. I'll be right back. And then I go and I tell the magistrate. And remember, probable cause means more probably than not. So then I, as a lowly C student at best police officer, which that's exactly what I was, will go before a magistrate, and it'll sound something like this. We got a 911 call. We went to the river. There was a massive boat wreck. We have 3 guys on scene that's saying that this guy was driving. They say that he's hammered drunk. He reeks of booze. He can't focus on his eyes. We couldn't do a pre-breath test because on scene, everybody was wet. He was in his underwear. They'd just been in a big wreck. I'm not even sure, like, medically what's going on with him at this point. I'm not willing to check his eyes right now because if he's got a concussion, I'm not going to be able to do that test anyway. So we did not do any field sobriety test. We did not do a pre-breath test on scene. We had a lot of moving parts. There's a missing girl currently. We did get him into the patrol, to an ambulance. He was belligerent to EMS workers. Here's one of the EMS workers' statement. He was slurring his speech. It just reeked of alcohol. He could barely alcohol. And then, of course, his friends admitted to there being alcohol. And I also saw that there were cans of booze in the thing. And so I'd like to have consent to draw that blood. That magistrate's going to be like, damn, Eric, that sounds like that guy was really drunk. I'm going to go ahead and give you a warrant to go draw that blood.
Sure. But hey, Lynn, thanks for asking, for sure.
Yeah, good question. No,
that explains a lot to people. So 0.286, that's where we're at. So it's hard to even tell you what. Okay, so at this point, dad and granddad. So Alex, who our main focus next week, Alex and granddad Randolph. Randolph is who Paul made the call to, if you remember, immediately after the crash. So dad and granddad swoop in on 2 wheels. They get to the hospital. Is it because they are concerned and worried about Paul? No. They, in fact, barely spend any time with Paul. They see him initially and then move on and essentially tag team compartmentalizing all the other kids that are there. So Mallory, we know, is not there. Paul's on his own. They're not paying attention to him. So we got the other 4, the other 2 couples. And dad and granddad immediately start talking to all of them. The first thing they tell them is, keep your mouth shut. Don't talk to the cops. Don't talk to anyone. Don't say a word. And then it gets even a bit more malicious because at first it was don't speak, and then it was, but if you do, Connor was driving the boat. So that's immediately the narrative they set in. We find out later that they actually recommended a lawyer to Connor and his family in the vein of helping, of being helpful, like, oh, we're here, we're lawyers, let me know, it'll be in your best interest after this, big event, if Connor lawyers up just to be safe, he's fine. And so dad recommends a lawyer to Connor and his family, and it's just so bizarre. The lawyer he recommends is actually his old college buddy, Alex's old college buddy. So we've learned that his family accepted this and hired it thinking that a favor was being done for them. And in fact, it was all to set Connor up to take the fall for driving the boat. Eventually that lawyer gets gone. Connor's family realizes that he's now being made the scapegoat. And that takes a little bit of time, but it's all done. But just so at every turn, this Alex is weaving, and even the granddad, this yucky stuff through this whole story. And we'll find out that honestly, for decades, this kind of thing has been going on. So when people do get frustrated with the police, I will say, there was the point where, Eric, I don't think I said this tonight. I think you and I talked about it earlier, but there was a point where Anthony was sitting in the back of the police car and said to a detective there, do you know the Murdaughs? And he said yes. And Anthony said, do you know that that's Alex's son? And pointed to Paul. And that police officer kind of paused, said, okay. And Anthony said, good luck, because he knew. So this is,
and that might just be a thing. Like the cop might just be being like, damn, it had to be me. I'm the one that's going to deal with this bullshit.
Sure. And that's what I was going to say. You and I think differ a little in speculation on this. So it depends. If you listen to different podcasts or if you read different news articles about this, people have a lot of different takes, and that's fine. That's going to happen with any kind of a case. But oh, you're back, you're so pretty. People have a lot of different takes on how this was handled by law enforcement. And I think I fall in the middle just based on the things that I've read. I don't think they did anything egregious or malicious or obstructive. I don't think that they obstructed the case. A lot of people are calling to say that law enforcement did, in fact, obstruct the case. I think that they knew this family, and I know we spoke on this earlier, and you were saying about the chief's kid and whatever. Maybe the chief didn't care if his kid got, maybe the chief was like, yeah, he just earned the right in jail for a couple days. Like, take him. Great.
No, our chief was very pro her son being a criminal.
Oh, it's the same one that.
Yeah, old Chief Jack Brown.
She's sweetie. This isn't, not that she couldn't cause repercussions there. Clearly, your chief loved you.
Yeah, Lynn. Here. Lynn's comment here is a policeman was fired for saying Paul drove, but for drugs. We actually talked about maybe trying to call the fired officer to get him on and to see what the whole story is. But man, let me tell you what, a rumor mill fake news can run very, very quickly in a police department.
Well, and
there can be a lot of other things. There can be a lot of reasons. Now, I'm not going to say that in this case, the chief wasn't so corrupt or the city manager wasn't so corrupt. And if that's the case, that we need to expose that. And that's something that one of the reasons why we're doing this in like 3 parts episodes, because we're still trying to get a hold of this guy to get his side of the story. I would love to know what he was actually fired for. Was it an insubordination thing? Was it some kind of other practice? I mean, it could be that he didn't do the proper DRE test and he fucked up the paperwork for like the upteenth millionth time. And they finally said like, dude, what if he messed up the paperwork to where the chief was like, dude, we had the slam dunk case here, but you've done jacked up this paperwork again. And now you can't testify that because you jacked it up. And he's like, no, I'm going to testify to it anyway. And then he does. And then the chief's like, dude, that you're not playing by the rules of the game. The rules are you already fucked it up. You don't get to go back and redo it because you jacked it up. Now you're fired. I don't know. I hope it was the latter. I hope it was, the cop was trying to do the right thing and the city manager just fired him because she's a piece of crap, but I don't know. So I don't know why this guy was fired, and I'd like to know. I would like to know. I would love it.
So again, thanks for chiming in, Lynn. I was going to touch on that. And I don't know. Again, all I can get is what I gather second and third hand. And I have reached out to that officer, and we are waiting. So we'll see. Even though that doesn't really follow into next week's show, I'm happy to have him on at any time to discuss this because it does interest me. But the story goes, when you read different things, that he was the one that did say that Paul drove, and then he was then subsequently fired. Don't know how accurate any of that is specifically. But let me go on and let's take a little in this. Again, this is very important for today's topic. And then again, most certainly sorry, y'all, I'm moving. I don't want y'all to yell at me again about this microphone. Most certainly for next week's show. So solicitor, if you don't know what a solicitor is, not every jurisdiction or every state has solicitors. It's essentially like a DA or a prosecutor in most jurisdictions. The distinction here is that if you are a solicitor, you also run you can concurrently run a private practice. So you can be a solicitor for your jurisdiction and have a private practice where you are then prosecutor for your own personal clients. So if you think about that, we can find a bit of conflict of interest here. There could be overlapping in ways that there certainly should not be. So they not only have their hand in the private sector, their hand in the state or county sector. I believe there were 16, let's right here. Yeah, so you have one solicitor for each judicial circuit, and South Carolina has 16 judicial circuits. So let's talk about real quick. So we've been talking about Paul. He was the driver of the boat. His dad is Alex, the current lawyer solicitor in town. So dad's father is Randolph. That's who Paul called right after the boat crash. We're going to take it back one more generation to Alex's dad's grandfather. So Paul's great grandfather. That's Randolph Sr. Randolph Sr. was, he got some money and some phosphate mines and things like that. He generated some financial status early on before he then became solicitor around one of the surrounding counties there where we're still talking about. He was killed in a train wreck. It was a car versus train in 1940. At that point, he had been solicitor for a few years, not a ton, under a decade. Was killed in 1940. So then in succession, we have his son, Randolph Jr., who was elected right after him, straight into the seat. So they are both at this point have been conducting private business, private prosecutorial business, and then their state stuff or their solicitor stuff, right? So now Senior's dead, Junior takes over. Junior is solicitor in that area and in some surrounding 5 counties from 1940 until 1987 when he retired. So he was there for 47 years. And then we have Alex, Paul's father, who then takes over in 87 until 2021, I believe, or until all of this kind of just happened. So we have about 85, 86 years of these three generations having their fingers in the private and county section of, thank you, Sean, of the law. So to speak on if you think it's a small town, it really is. All these counties are small counties in southern coastal South Carolina, at least over those past few decades, right? So to the point that they had, when Randolph Sr. was killed in the car versus train accident, moving forward decades later, the rest of the family, Randolph Jr., granddad, sued CSX multiple times to the tune of, oh gosh, I don't think I even wrote it down, guys. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I want to say like 18 million or more. Won it all. And so to the point that they now consider their building their personal prosecution business. They call it the building that CSX built. It's kind of known around town that way. So everyone knows, like, they would even take 50% of any settlement that you had. So you would go to them because you knew that either you're going to win or they will play some dirty tricks to get someone to settle out of court, and you'll just get at least 50% of that settlement. So I just wanted to touch on what they kind of have built in that community long before any of this stuff happened.
So essentially, just to recap the evening for you guys, and as we wrap it up, but basically you have a lawyer. We have a very prominent family of lawyers that date back over 100 years, right? It's over 100 years that their family has been lawyers in South Carolina.
Well,
and they're rich. They're little rich kids get on a boat and they go to an oyster roast. And it's not just your typical kids drinking a couple of beers and going out on the boat. The son of Alex, Paul, gets really, really, really stupid drunk, fucks around on the boat. Everybody wants to get off. He's an asshole. He wrecks the boat. And now we have a missing girl, and a whole lot of crime is coming. And we're going to hit this up next week, where we're going to pick this right back up. Same time, same place. And we got about 2 more series because there's a lot of crime that's going to happen.
Let me wrap it up real fast. We running out of time?
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to just say that moving forward real quick, on April 18th of 2019, this actually happens to be Mallory's birthday. Paul was indicted on 3 felonies: boating under the influence resulting in death, and 2 counts of boating under the influence resulting in grave bodily harm. He was never handcuffed. He was never actually escorted into a jail or a prison. His mugshot was taken in the courthouse hallway in his own clothes. The prosecutor wanted him to have an alcohol monitor, and the judge refused. And then
this isn't because now when you listen to all the other podcasts, they're all going to put this on the cops. The cops don't have a say of what happens when they get into jail. They don't put the cuffs on.
Oh, no, I'm not blaming cops.
I know, but all the other podcasts do, and it's hilarious because this is a judge thing. This is the person who runs the jail thing. This is like high up people once the cops turn them over in the hospital, who
are going to be more interconnected with these lawyers. Exactly. I agree 100% there. And on May 6th, he pled not guilty, and he was released on $50,000 bond. He never, between being indicted and pleading, didn't have to be in the jail. They let him, he was free to roam around the state. He didn't really have any restrictions on geographical location. Released on $50K bond. Daddy paid it, and he went right back to his normal life.
Well, I can only hope that next week we find that somebody gets their comeuppance. That's what I hope.
Yep. We'll see. There's a lot, so much more. Like I want to say that we're going to wrap it up next week, but
no, we got at least 2 more episodes on this. There's no way we're going to be able to break it down. Guys, listen, if you want to join us on Thursday for last call of the day, we'll have Craig Dulesky on, taking us through what it's like to be a day in the life of Craig Dulesky. This is a guy that I've I've wanted to know about for so long. So I'm actually really excited about that. And then, of course, Friday, we have our flagship show, our case breakdowns with Mike the Cop and myself. But until then, this is Andrea Up Late and Eric Tansey. We'll see you guys. We'll see you guys next Tuesday live.
Yeah. Good night, y'all.
Cheers.